this is Jess DaMassa with WTF Health. I'm here at Giant Health, and joining me right now I have Jess Mills. She's the co-founder for Act for Cancer, the Tessa Jowell Mission for Change. So, pleasure to speak with you. Why don't you introduce everybody watching to Act for Cancer and explain what it is?
So Act for Cancer was founded early this year by myself, my now late mother Tessa Jowell, and our dear friend and co-founder Jack Kriendler, who's also a good friend of Giant Health and Exponential Medicine, as you mentioned. So my mother was a magnificent, kind of universally loved, well-respected politician in the UK, and had done extensive work in public health in her life. And in her last 4 months of her life, we instigated Act for Cancer to try and radically reduce the huge cancer inequality gap that exists in the UK, largely around patient access to the front lines of innovation. Because for lots of rare and complex forms of cancer in the UK, the standard of care, and actually around the world, offers no chance of long-term survival or good quality of life, whereas patients who have the privilege of income or network can very often go beyond that, and in those instances you find people living very well, quite often hugely outliving their prognosis and with good quality of life. So there's a huge gap in the opportunities that patients are having, largely down to privilege. And our mission at Act for Cancer is to try and close that inequality gap by bringing personalised medicine and adaptive combination of therapies to the National Health Service for all patients, which essentially means creating a kind of personalised medicine, delivering personalised medicine at scale, starting with brain cancer and then moving on to other rare types of cancer across the board.
This is such a tremendous issue, and I think that the themes within it, around the world, everyone's talking social determinants of health, not only for cancer, but I mean even some very basic healthcare treatment. But I think taking this on at such a specific level and taking it on with brain cancer, I think is just so commendable. So how are you going to do this? Because this is kind of like, it's like boiling the ocean, really. You're bringing personalized medicine at scale, which personalized medicine, even in something less complex is not widely available or even widely offered in some places. And then I think as far as reaching out within the population and trying to, I guess, not only train patients to demand that kind of care, but also providers, how are you planning to tackle this?
So in the first instance, we now have funded the first ever adaptive trial for brain cancer, which is going to be launching next year. And so in the first instance, the most effective way to start to create to be able to deliver an adaptive, personalised approach at scale is through an adaptive trial framework. And we're going to be starting that off with brain cancer through an initiative called the Brain Matrix at Birmingham Hospital next year, which is going to draw on 10 other centres of excellence to deliver the programme. So that's the first, that's the kind of first step. There's also a huge challenge around changing the culture of hearts and minds within the sector, and the third one is really importantly creating the technological and data solutions to be able to create a kind of decision support system that can be used at scale for thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. So it's a combination of things.
I want to talk about all three of those a little bit more deeply. So on the first one, creating that adaptive clinical trial framework, what needs to shift in the way that people are conducting trials now, or how they're orchestrating delivering treatment to brain cancer patients now in order to be able to move to that more adaptive format?
Well, this is not just the case for brain cancer, for cancers across the board,
Sure.
For complex system biology problems across the board. The current structure of testing versus A versus B is never ever going to benefit patients when you're talking about a highly complex, multifaceted disease that's going to need multiple different agents to try and contain it, if not cure it, in the first instance. So the trial set up as we have it at the moment is absolutely not serving patients, because patients are locked on to testing one drug only, which will never provide the silver bullet that's needed. They're also locked onto a therapy which they can't get off whether it's working or not, and that is not serving patients. Patients need to know in real time if something is working for them or not, and that's what the adaptive framework does. It allows you to try, to test, and then to adapt based on how the patient is responding. So we're really trying to create a completely different precedent here for the way that trials are done, still allowing pharma to test their therapeutics in a controlled, in a highly tested, controlled environment, but in a way that puts patients back at the centre, so that from someone that's come from the patient journey, that's how I've come to this whole space as my, essentially I was my mother's patient advocate, whatever that means. It's a very official term for something which is actually just a work of love for the person that you will do anything in the world to save, I really know what it's like to be a patient living on the front lines of these diseases, and the options available to patients are criminally limited, and not because there aren't other options out there. It's because the frameworks that we have at the moment are hugely outdated.
You had mentioned the next part of your three-prong attack was on changing the hearts and minds, and then the third part was on technology. And I want to talk about, I guess, the two of those together. Because it's like when you look at that, and it's like, what's going to be the most complicated? And it's like, changing the framework, changing the way people have been thinking, and their mindset for care delivery and how they've been executing things, or is it going to be integrating the new tech in? And it's like, where do you, as far as from your perspective on that, what do you think is going to be the most difficult to change, having lived through this experience yourself as a patient? As a patient caregiver, I should say. Sorry.
So the technology part is absolutely doable. There are all the technological solutions out there that need to be, curated and architected, but they do exist. The technological solutions are not the issue with this. It is actually the hearts and minds, and how you, I do not want ever this mission to be one which polarizes clinicians versus patients. It absolutely needs to be a movement which is completely supporting a different type of collaboration between patients and clinicians, where the technological solutions that we're talking about enable to better clinician experience as well as bettering patient experience. So but there is a lot of work to be done in terms of informing that cultural change piece within oncology, which largely is in lots of ways is still stuck in a very traditional practice, and we need to transition that to the future where these solutions are already available.
And I'm curious too about how this conversation started, which was you spoke so beautifully about the economics behind it, and I guess what needs to change and the hearts and minds of the economics about it because I'm thinking in the U.S. framework, it's like a lot of times it will go down to, well, the clinicians do want to participate. They do, in providing better care. They do want to be more, agile. They do want to deliver, what it will take to save a life. But a lot of times they're bound by, who's going to pay for it. And so there's the prevailing sentiment and the thinking, the hearts and the minds behind the payment model. Are you guys tackling that at all? And if so, how?
Well, absolutely. In order to be able to deliver this, we have to address that. There is still this is not an initiative which is could or would or this is not to the exclusion of fruitful new ways of working with pharma. It absolutely is going to be reliant on that, and all the conversations that we've been having indicate that from a pharma perspective, there is an awareness that the model in terms of patient-centric care with trials does have to change, and as long as for pharma, the adaptive framework is a very, very effective way for pharma to test their drugs in real time, and because of the way the adaptive framework works, patients are tested very, very regularly. There's a very rich, highly iterated patient data that comes out of that, which then will be available to pharma. So there still is the kind of economic incentive for pharma to be involved in these trials.
Jess, last thoughts from you. We have a nice platform here for you, so ask. What do you need help with to take Act for Cancer bigger, broader, and make this a very successful, fight for this first year?
I just ask people to think about, at the limit of your ambitions, what is most important in this space. And if it's not patients, then there's some big questions that need to be asked. I think I'll leave it there.
Jess, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us. This is just, it's such a noble ambition, and happy to help in any way. Thank you so much. Thank you. Likewise. This is Jessica DaMassa with WTF Health here at Giant Health. Thanks for joining us.